We just had an event here in town. How many people were at Neighborhood Economics? Just so I can tell, it's about people on that side, nobody on this side. So to you folks, the people on my right, we had about 220 people come to an event we called Neighborhood Economics, and it's part of what we're calling taking the economy back from Wall Street to Main Street, to localizing the economy, accelerating the flow of capital into all our neighborhoods. And it was pretty interesting. Out of the 215 or 20 people that came, about 60% were from Cincinnati and the greater Cincinnati area right across from Kentucky. But other folks were from all around. There were people from Pittsburgh, from Oakland, from Detroit, from New York, from Louisville, from Allentown, Pennsylvania, from Providence. And they're all part of what's turning out to be a movement. It's localizing the economy, but it's an inclusive localization of the economy. The first part of the local economy movement was kind of the farm to table, let's localize our food movement. This is a more inclusive movement that is trying to get it into all neighborhoods, not just farm to table, but into the neighborhoods that are food deserts. And we're looking at new ways of democratic funding of the economy, not sending the money to Wall Street, but investing in our own economies here, not just creating jobs, but creating wealth in poor neighborhoods, and helping entrepreneurs, African American minority entrepreneurs, get funded. So I'm going to talk about how I got here to this place and why this event was here with my wife, who's the producer of our other events, is here with me, who's also an Episcopal priest. So I'll start about 10 years ago when this journey started. I was starting one of the first, what was then called a social venture fund, or what is now called an impact investing fund. Raise your hand if you know what the word impact investing is. And about 3 or 4. So for everybody else, it's proactively investing in businesses that are created to solve a problem and make money. If we look at the problems of the world, there's not enough money in philanthropy and there's not enough money in government, even when government is efficient, to solve all the problems of our world, from income disparity to climate change. So these are businesses, they're called social enterprises. A business is created to solve a problem. And they can be things like financial inclusion is one of the big places that's happening now. That means making money, reducing the cost of being poor, not making money off the poor, but it's really expensive to be poor. High transaction costs if you're not in the banking system. If somebody sends you $40 to pay your cable bill, it can cost $11 to get that bill back to the cable company, out to a money order, into a form you can send it back in. And so there are businesses arising that can reduce that $11 cost to $2 if you can't pay your cable bill. So it's those sorts of businesses, or renewable energy, solar power off the grid in sub-Saharan Africa, which is doing things like reducing the cost of kerosene and power by 40% through solar panels, but it's also taking out something that kills people. Indoor air pollution is estimated to kill about 1 million people a year. So it's making money, reducing the cost of power to people off the grid in sub-Saharan Africa and in India, but making money through the solar panels and making it big. So we were investing in, and there were several funds that were trying to arise at the same time. We got this idea, let's help these entrepreneurs by raising money for them rather than having them have to go out and do it themselves. And we ran into the dominant myth of capital that turned out to hurt investors that we talked to. We had one of our companies pitch Bill Gates, and he said, and it was a fair trade coffee company, and he said, look, I can't be around this idea. Let me tell you why. I said, I have 2 pockets. I have one pocket I want to put all the money in the world in, and that's what I focus on. I have another pocket that I put some money in to do good. You're saying there's a space where I can invest with the goals of philanthropy. I can't be around that idea. I need you to lead. We had 2 different billionaires who told us that idea hurt them. One of them said it hurt right here. One of them said it hurt here. But they couldn't be around that idea. That hurt their myth of capital, which is I am obliged to invest for myself. We've glorified and sanctified investing for the self. Milton Friedman said the goal of a business, the social responsibility of a business is to make a profit. And so you invest for yourself. It glorifies selfishness. And then you put a little bit aside to do good. We were saying, no, you can invest with the goals of philanthropy. Because remember, there's not enough money in philanthropy or government altogether to solve the problems of the world. And business can be more efficient than either government or philanthropy, because we know philanthropy and foundations don't want things to grow. They want to fund proof of concept, but when it gets big, you have to go somewhere else. But we ran into this problem. All the other funds were having the same problem. This idea hurt. They didn't want to be around it. So we said, well, how can we make that idea not hurt? So we created a conference where they could see that you're not just following a lone, hand-waving visionary down a blind alley into an idea that's going to be painful, but we showed the full spectrum of what people were doing. At the time, there was a lot of stuff called venture philanthropy, where you give and then they invest. And there were nonprofit loan funds like Root Capital that lent to fair trade to make that happen, and funds like Good Capital, ours, where we might take a reduction in return for higher impact, and sometimes we wouldn't. And those places like financial inclusion, where the market and justice overlap in a little timely way. And we created this whole spectrum, and so they all were willing to come. So the conference validated the concept of impact investing, and it got defined, and Rockefeller put millions behind it. But we validated that concept and made it safe for these people to think differently about their money. And we called our conference literally the market at the intersection of money and meaning. The meaning part is where you give for what you care about. The money part is where you get a financial return. And we said you're blending those things. It turned out that people were ready for that new idea if you could present it in a way that it wasn't scary and it wasn't a pitch from one investor, but you're learning about this new way of thinking. Because it's a different way of thinking with this impact investing. You invest for yourself. We're saying you can invest for us and yourself at the same time. So you're actually different in the world. You typically take the gold behind your storehouse, and the commons are the waters outside and the open land. We're saying you can invest in the commons and your household at the same time. So you had to do that, and you had to change the time value of money, that you can invest long term to create the world where you want to live in. So it's worked. We've grown from 600 people in 2008. This past year, from 26 countries, we had 2,700 people from 70 countries. So it's really worked. And that concept has been sold, but the new ideas in investing typically start with venture capital, because that's where you try the risky new stuff where there's a high percentage of failure. So I wanted to say, how about places where venture capital doesn't work? How can we do that? So you started looking locally, and started looking at where this could happen, in the places. Venture capital works in San Francisco. It really doesn't work in Cincinnati. If you talk to the folks at Centrifuge, the tech accelerator here, their big wins, once they get some funding, they've gone to Silicon Valley. Tech companies go to Silicon Valley. They don't stay in Cincinnati unless there may be one little vertical about machine controls or something. Tech companies leave here. Tech companies are not the future of most places. They're a future of places where you have an overload of talent that can be there. So, and we also were getting a lot of demand from a lot of places that they wanted SOCAP in their town. I mean, people would say, we'll give you $100,000 to bring SOCAP to Istanbul, or to Dallas, or to Singapore. And we realized they didn't really want a conference. They wanted the way we did the convening. And we had a different way of convening that caused our conference to grow faster than the others. Because a lot of conferences in this space were trying to get the right people in the room, which we decided was the exact wrong tactic. You want the right people in the room if you're a grain cartel and you want to fix prices. If you're doing a real marketplace, you want the barbarian and the Byzantine. You want the unlikely allies. And we were always looking for the valuable strangers. And this kind of inclusive thing where you discover that people in some silo next to you could actually contribute a lot to what you're doing once you discovered who they were and where the value was. And so as we looked at that and the places that we wanted to do it, we did one conference last year as a kind of a proof of concept in Louisville. We got invited to Cincinnati by Peter Block in the Economics of Compassion. And then we got welcomed even deeper by the folks at the Cathedral, who agreed to be the founding, principal sponsor of this conference that just happened. And so people came from all over the country to try to localize the economy and to make it more just, but to use business to make it more just. And as you look at that, one of the things you find is that if it's hard to think about your money in a new way, and you can do it in places where you're trained to think about money in a new way, like venture capital, that is all about trying new things that is new, we think that our premise at this, and this is me and Tim Sorens, my co-founder, and Rosalie Harden, my wife, and other co-founder, that you can do that on a more deep basis if you can invest in your local community. Because you don't think about the abstracts of asset classes, you think about investing in a community where your kids will want to move back. So this kind of neighborhood economics is really, you can think of it as a grandchild acquisition strategy, because it's building a community that your kids will want to move back. And so you'll be, as boomers, your legacy will be your kids will want to move back, and your grandchildren will be here more easily than they would be otherwise. So that's what we've done, and there's a real movement happening here. We've hired a key role. One of the things we find where these economies are becoming really revitalized, there's a certain key role. Thrive here calls it the chief cat herder. Other places in the farm-to-table linking in Louisville, Kentucky, they call it the public interest broker. In economic development, that term is being called the community quarterback. And that's not an executive director of any nonprofit, not somebody working for a particular business, not somebody working for government, but they're the ones connecting all the dots and keeping the people talking to each other that haven't been before. They're the connective tissue, the network weaver with a business head. It's kind of a community organizer with that kind of heart who's also thinking about business. It's maybe a community banker who's also deeply involved in the community. So we've hired Derek Brazil, who's one of the founders of Mortar, the African-American focused accelerator here, as our community quarterback. But we're finding that that role, and the Federal Reserve has done the studies, that when someone plays that role, economies become revitalized. An example of what happened on Monday, the day before our conference, we had a meeting in town, and we got people who'd never been in the room together before. So we got real estate developers, city officials, the mayor, the vice mayor, the city council people, tech folks from Centrifuge and the Brandery, along with community folks who are working in Evanston and working in the West End and those kinds of folks, and they'd never been in the room together, and they looked at the issue of the fact that African Americans in this town aren't the entrepreneurs and what that means to the economy. And so the role of the community quarterback is to get people who haven't been in the room together to meet together, to realize that there's a big problem they can solve together, and then to go to next steps. We've gotten commitment from David Sand and some of the law firms that they want to have this regular meeting to get follow up on this every quarter and to really make this a goal. So it's where economic development becomes really localized. And so that's the role of the community quarterback, is linking all these people and figuring out who should be in this meeting and following up after the meeting to make sure things happen. So it's getting people who haven't met together to meet together and making sure all the next steps happen and keeping that connection happening. So Derek Brazil is doing that. And then we're going to work with a combination of the Mortar for startups, focused on African Americans, with Kiva, which is doing $5,000 loans at $25 a piece from a person toward those folks, backed by, there's a particular bank that wants to do the matching of that, and a new accelerator coming out of Xavier that's also got a really good curriculum on how to do that stuff. But they're finding unlikely allies locally, figuring out who the valuable stranger is that it could be in your town. Focus on this role of the community quarterback. So over the next few months, Derek Brazil, who couldn't be here, is going to be doing looking for four things in this community. He'll be the market scout and finding a market scout, finding the entrepreneurs who are ready for a $5,000 loan, or the folks with an idea who can go into the expanded Mortar to do a startup. So it's market scout looking for the entrepreneurs, function one. Then the second is the navigator, finding the mentors, the people in this room, the people in the churches who want to advise and help those businesses and help them figure out things from accounting to marketing to things that are specific to their industry. And these are not businesses that are going to get $1 million and go off to Silicon Valley. These are businesses that would expand to a second location in this neighborhood or in another neighborhood, a body shop, a florist, a caterer, those kinds of things. The community connector, so finding the folks in the churches, finding folks in the neighborhoods they'll be connected to, and then the investor relations, finding the people who want to put money to make